are many important roles in aviation, from the pilot to the porter, but none more iconic than the flight attendant. Images of stewardesses from the Pan Am era show a glamorous history of flying, right? The lives of these women, though, were much more turbulent. A new film by PBS called Fly With Me tells the story of the women who pioneered a new career and ended up fighting for equality.
The men made the stewardess feel that they were not entitled to the job and they could not handle the job of purser. I realized as Master Executive Chairman that someone had to do it. So I applied for the job. I became the first and only female purser with Northwest Airlines.
Wow. I'm sitting with a movie star. I just saw that. Joining me now is the woman you just saw featured in the film, Mary Pat Laffey Inman. So take us back to the 1970s and what it was like to be, at the time, called a stewardess, I guess, right, on those flights.
Well, safety was our most important issue on the when we were on the airplane. But it wasn't until the Civil Rights Bill was signed in 1960, de jure integration 1965, that included gender, that allowed us recourse.
Yeah. You were second-class citizens, in a sense, in the workforce.
Yes, we were not allowed to be married. We were not allowed to gain weight. We were not allowed to wear eyeglasses. We were not allowed to have children. And the men were.
Wow.
So, or we could not check out as pursers.
Okay, but you actually broke the mold with that one, didn't
Yes.
you? You became a purser, which is like the head flight attendant of the team, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And how did that come about?
Well, that came about not easily. We signed a contract in 1967, a non-discriminatory contract. The company hired 5 men off the street to become pursers. I called the Director of Labor Relations and said, you must post the bid. They posted the bid, and the women were afraid to bid because the men had a good hold on the job and et cetera. So I applied for the job. It took them 8 months for them to come up with a testing procedure. I scored higher than all the men, and therefore they could not turn me down.
So did you ever in your wildest dreams imagine that you would be on the forefront of a civil rights issue like this?
No, I did not. However, it was the right thing to do. It was, especially after we knew that gender was part, and we had the law on our side. No, I never thought that I would be the forefront of women's liberation.
Yeah, and yet you had to, in a sense, start a movement at that point. How did you get colleagues to get on board and to speak up?
That was education. Most women were afraid to sign something, but I had to explain to them the Civil Rights Bill. We had our rights. We could not be harmed or fired because we signed to become a part of the class action.
People didn't even realize their own rights at that time.
One woman who did not sign said to me, and she of course did not receive remuneration, said to me, Pat, I didn't know we had rights.
Oh my gosh.
And that broke my heart.
Yeah.
Because obviously I didn't educate her.
Well, you couldn't get to everyone.
Yeah, I couldn't get to everyone.
But you got to enough, and it became a major
class action
lawsuit. And even Ruth Bader Ginsburg ended up being part of this story at one point. Can you tell me about that?
She wrote the decision in the Federal District Court of Appeals. It then went, by the way, Robert Bork and I forget another conservative. She wrote the decision. The conservatives assented in the decision. It then went to the Supreme Court twice. The Supreme Court denied cert. They refused to hear it.
Okay.
And so it was remanded back to the Federal District Court of Appeals, and Ruthie Bader Ginsburg's decision held. So
That's pretty amazing that your story is intertwined with Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes.
That's pretty neat. How did your participation in the film come about?
Oh, well, Susan Colt called me cold. And I almost didn't take the call, but it didn't say spam. So
It would if I had called you. It would have said spam. You can be sure of that.
right, it could have. So that's how
So
I
she
met
what? She
Sarah.
said we're making a movie, and
Yeah, I'm going to do a documentary on PBS, and I thought, well, she might be legit,
yeah,
because I've had other people call me, and they want to hear sensationalism. They want to hear that I went down in flames, or some
Yeah.
other high drama, and
it's actually a story about months and years and perseverance.
yes,
And people holding the line, and it's intriguing though. It's
15
a very
years.
These battles are not quickly fought, are they?
No,
And
15 years.
Do you see any parallels with other groups trying to find rights even up to today? People trying to be heard.
Well, yes. Still, there are many issues in many of the women's careers who are not treated equally.
Yeah.
But more and more women are taking action.
Yeah, well, I'm
So,
sure a lot of people a lot of women especially, are very much grateful for your efforts and the
Yes.
efforts of all of your
Yeah,
colleagues.
it was a landmark case.
Yeah,
And the thing was that women did not know that gender was in the Civil Rights Bill. And there was a congressman in Virginia who added gender, thinking that the northern congressman would not vote for a civil rights bill that had gender in it, because they knew the implications.
and you were able to play out those implications.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And the film Fly With Me is being screened at the Museum of Flight this Saturday, February 10th at 3 p.m. Space is limited, and pre-registration is suggested on their website.